Welcome back to another episode of Barbecue and Bottles, and today we're out at the lake and we're doing Wagyu New York strips. Today we're going to be doing these reverse sear over charcoal. We're going to first go low and slow, indirect, get these up to the right temperature that we're looking for, and then sear them off over a ripping hot bed of charcoal. So if you're into that kind of thing, stick around, we'll take you through our steps. So just look at these New York strips. We went to our butcher, we were looking for just regular prime cuts that have really rich marbling, and they actually had Wagyu cuts. It's just incredible, the level of marbling embedded within these steaks. So that's really gonna render down through our cook, make sure that we have a really, really rich flavor profile. Now, these are actually American Wagyu, so they've taken traditionally a black Angus steer and then breeded that with a Japanese Wagyu. That's how you get this level of marbling throughout the steak. So what are we gonna do? First step is just salting them. So because we've taken these out of the fridge, we're about an hour away from actually searing them off on the grill. We're just gonna go on with a fine kosher salt. So we'll season these up nice and high here so that the seasoning sprinkles across the steak nice and evenly. And we're going on with a reasonably generous amount of kosher salt. These are about a 1-inch thick steak. We like our salt, we're gonna go in with a decent amount here, but just use however much salt that you're comfortable with and that suits your flavor profile. So we'll pat that in and we'll flip over the steaks. Oh, just look at that. Incredible, incredible marbling. And we'll season this side. So again, go in, lightly season here. Now we're gonna wanna get the edges of the steak here, so there's a bunch of salt that's hit the cutting board. Now just move that around. Make sure you get all of that onto the edges of the steak so that your steak is seasoned evenly all the way around. Now this salt, this is just diamond kosher salt. We'll put a link down in the description below. This is the salt that we use on all of our steaks if we're seasoning about an hour before our cook, because it's really nice and fine and it dissolves into the steak really quickly, as opposed to say the Maldon Fleur de Sel, which is our traditional go-to, that usually takes 4 or 5 hours before it's fully absorbed into the steaks. All right, so with these all seasoned up, now we're just gonna let them rest here for an hour, let them come up to room temperature, and then we'll hit the grill with them. So in the meantime, let's go over to the grill and we'll show you how to prep that for an indirect cook. All right, we're over at our Weber Kettle here, and we've got this charcoal just ripping hot. Now we're using lump charcoal. You wanna use a high quality lump charcoal. We're just using a chimney here that we crumpled up a bunch of newspaper, stuck it under the chimney, lighted it with a match, and we got a really nice natural ignition here. So now our coals are ripping hot, so we're just gonna remove these from the kettle, get our setup ready for the indirect cook before we pour in the coals. So we've substituted out our typical charcoal baskets that are just these really cheap metal things on the side, and we've put in a kick ash basket, and it comes with this little divider that you can set in here. Depending on how much charcoal you're using, you can move this divider closer or further away from the edges, so that's a pretty cool feature. Now, I think that's gonna be enough for the charcoal that we're using here, so let's go dump it in. So for our indirect cook, we've got the charcoal all on one side. We'll put the steaks over on this side. Now let's get our grill grate on. Perfect, just like that. Now we're gonna get our lid on and we'll let this warm up to temp. Now we're aiming for an internal temp here in the kettle of about 225. Now that means we have to move the vents to about a quarter open, just like that. And we'll let this warm up. We'll give it 5 minutes before we drop the steaks on. So we've got our friend here, Delilah, who's gonna help us out with the cook. Yeah, Delilah. She's really helpful when you're doing steak cooks. Every time that we've got Delilah by our side here, not only does it cook better, but we've got a better taste tester. All right, our grill is up to temp here. So we're gonna get the lid off and we're gonna set our steaks down on the opposite side of the coals. Oh, you can just hear those sear as they hit the grill. So we'll get those as far away from the coals as we can over here, and we're gonna sear these off indirect. Now we've got 2 wood chunks. These are actually maple wood, so we're just gonna stick those down in the coals here. This isn't a necessary step, but it's just gonna bring a little bit more smoke flavor to our cook and another layer of flavor to these steaks. So we'll get the lid back on, and again, we're getting the lid on with the vent here over top of the steaks, and that way as the smoke comes up off the charcoal, it'll come across the grill over top of the proteins before escaping out of the vents. Hey Delilah. So we've hit an internal temp here about 120, so we're just gonna remove the steaks from the grill. We'll let these rest for about 10 minutes, and we'll get these coals ripping hot so that we can sear these steaks off. Now we've got these coals ripping hot. It's been about 10 minutes since we took the steaks off. So now we're just gonna move these over, and this isn't gonna take very long. We're just gonna sear these on each side for maybe 20-30 seconds, just to get a little bit of that char flavor into the steaks. All right, we've hit an internal temp here of about 130 on these steaks, so we're just gonna take them off. And now we're gonna let these guys rest for another 5 minutes before we slice into them. All right, we've had these guys resting here for about 5 minutes. Now we're gonna slice in and see how these turned out. All right, we've sliced into this. We've got a beautiful medium rare right on the middle of this steak. We've got a little bit of gray on the exterior just from that sear at the end, but I'm really excited to dig into this Wagyu. Just the smell, the richness of this marbling, I think this is gonna be incredible. So there's only one thing left to do here, and that is to dig in for the taste test. So I've cut off a little piece here with the fat cap on it. Reverse sear over charcoal. It's one of my favorite ways to prepare a steak. You just get all of that richness from the charcoal, the applewood smoke. You can really taste that in here. You've got the saltiness from our brine, and of course, the Wagyu cut, incredibly, incredibly tender, really delicate. And because we went low and slow through this cook, it was really nice and rendered, and this steak just practically melts in your mouth. So, if you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, we've got more of these videos to come. And if you want to check out more of our steak videos, we've got a playlist right here that you can dive in. We've done about 20 different experiments testing different methods of preparation to see which ones are the best. Thanks again for tuning in. What did you think of that, Delilah? 2 thumbs up?